October 1924. Inside a refinery in New Jersey, workers begin laughing, then screaming, then collapsing. Some claw at invisible insects crawling beneath their skin. Others fall into violent seizures, muttering nonsense before their bodies simply give out. Doctors have no explanation. Newspapers call it insanity gas. Behind the factory walls, executives already know exactly what is happening, and they say nothing at all. 5 men are dead within days. Dozens more are hospitalized, some permanently deranged. And yet, in boardrooms far away, men in tailored suits calculate something colder than human life: profit margins. What poured through that plant would soon pour into the air of every city on Earth, into the lungs of every child born for the next 50 years. This is the story of a substance now linked to brain damage, violence, and death, a substance that was knowingly, deliberately hidden from the entire world. The men who buried the truth walked free. The product stayed on shelves for 5 more decades. What you are about to learn quietly altered the biology of nearly every human being alive today, and almost no one who lived through it ever understood why. Not the mothers, not the drivers, not even some of the scientists who helped create it. The truth was buried so deep that it took nearly half a century and one obsessive researcher to drag it back into the light. Rewind 4 years earlier. The automobile had become an obsession, but engines had a problem: a violent knocking sound that wasted fuel and wore machines down to scrap. Inside a General Motors laboratory in Dayton, Ohio, a brilliant young chemist named Thomas Midgley Jr. was tasked with solving it, whatever the cost. After years of failed experiments, he found his answer: tetraethyl lead. A single teaspoon mixed into gasoline silenced the knock completely. There was only one forbidden detail. Lead was already known, for over a century, to cause madness, paralysis, and death in factory workers exposed to it. Midgley knew. His employer knew. So they made a decision that would echo for generations. They simply renamed the danger. Tetraethyl lead was rebranded as ethyl. The word lead quietly erased from every advertisement, every barrel, every gas station sign. General Motors, Standard Oil, and DuPont joined forces, forming a new company built entirely around this one chemical, the Ethyl Corporation. Production began in secrecy, inside plants nicknamed the Looney Gas Building by the very men who worked there. Workers were already collapsing before a single gallon reached the public. And here is the detail that should chill you. Thomas Midgley himself, the inventor being celebrated in the press as a genius, was already secretly battling his own lead poisoning, forced to take leave to recover while publicly insisting, on record, that the substance was completely safe. In one infamous press conference, he poured tetraethyl lead over his own hands and inhaled its vapor, smiling for the cameras, insisting he could do it daily without harm. Behind him, in that same building, employees were already being carried out on stretchers. By 1925, the death toll was impossible to hide. At the Bayway plant in New Jersey alone, 5 workers were dead, and dozens more institutionalized, some permanently, their minds destroyed by chronic lead exposure. The story reached newspapers nationwide. Public health officials demanded answers. The Surgeon General convened an emergency conference, forcing the Ethyl Corporation to defend a product it had barely begun to sell. Internal company letters, uncovered decades later, reveal executives, privately, acknowledging the danger while publicly downplaying it as an unfortunate accident. Nothing more. One infamous internal remark dismissed public alarm as overreaction from people who simply did not understand industrial progress. Independent scientists who raised concerns were quietly discredited, their funding cut, their warnings buried under industry-sponsored studies designed to reach a predetermined conclusion: safe, safe, always safe. Production paused for less than a year. Then it resumed. expanding into nearly every gas station in America. Here is the moment that should stop you cold. Internal memos show the company understood, in exact scientific terms, precisely how much lead a human body could absorb before irreversible neurological damage began. And they calculated that threshold not to protect the public, but to legally justify continued sales. For the next 5 decades, hundreds of millions of vehicles burned leaded gasoline daily. Lead settled into soil, into dust, into paint, into the bloodstream of nearly every child born in that era. Blood lead levels in the average American, by mid-century, were measured at hundreds of times higher than pre-industrial humans. Entire generations absorbed a neurotoxin. With every breath near a highway, every playground built beside a busy road, every school within reach of exhaust fumes, and almost no one outside the industry knew the truth had been calculated, tested, and hidden from the very beginning. The forbidden knowledge sat locked in filing cabinets, guarded for 50 years, while an entire civilization poisoned itself one tank of gasoline at a time. The truth finally surfaced in the 1960s, not through a whistleblower, but through a geochemist named Claire Patterson, a man simply trying to date the age of the Earth. While studying ancient ice cores and ocean sediment, he stumbled onto something horrifying. Modern lead levels in the atmosphere were hundreds of times higher than anything found in nature. Patterson traced the source directly back to leaded gasoline. The industry responded exactly as it had decades earlier, discrediting him, cutting his funding, pressuring the institutions that employed him to silence his research. He refused to stop. For nearly 2 decades, Patterson fought alone against some of the most powerful corporations in America, presenting evidence that children living near highways carried measurably higher lead levels in their blood, linked directly to lower IQ scores, behavioral problems, and irreversible developmental damage. The government finally acted. The Environmental Protection Agency began phasing lead out of gasoline in the 1970s. But the full ban in the United States did not arrive until 1996, more than 70 years after executives first learned the danger inside that New Jersey plant. Some countries continued using leaded gasoline into the 2000s. No executive ever faced criminal charges. No company ever paid meaningful restitution to the millions exposed. Researchers today still study the connection between that era's lead exposure and rising crime rates through the late 20th century, a hypothesis that remains debated but deeply unsettling. What happened to an entire generation's developing brains can never fully be measured and never fully be undone. The men who buried the truth died wealthy, celebrated, and largely unpunished, while millions carried the consequences silently, in their blood, for the rest of their lives. Even now, in older cities across the world, that same lead still lingers in soil and dust, quietly waiting in places no one thinks to test. This is what silence looks like when it wears a suit and signs a paycheck. Not a single lie, but thousands of small ones, stacked quietly for 50 years, until an entire species carried the evidence in its bloodstream. Power does not always announce itself with violence. Sometimes it simply waits, patiently, for the world to forget to ask questions. The most dangerous secrets are rarely hidden in shadows. They are hidden in plain sight, wrapped in a friendly brand name, poured into something as ordinary as gasoline. So ask yourself, what forbidden truth is being renamed right now, sitting quietly on a shelf near you, waiting 50 years to be believed? Tell me, in the comments below, what disturbed you most about this story, and whether you think anyone truly learned the lesson at all, and if history like this deserves to be remembered rather than buried again. Consider staying close, because the next cover-up we uncover together might be even darker and even closer to your own life than this one.